Ladies and gentlemen, it is over. It's over. We have a champion, and we have 2 more players added to the candidates tournament, which will happen in 2024 in Toronto, in Canada. The candidates tournament will crown who will be the next challenger to the World Chess Championship against Ding Liren. Going into today's final round of action, we have 3 people at the top: Hikaru Nakamura, Vidit Gujarati, and Esipenko. And only the next 3 people in line can knock them down. And those people are Vincent Keimer, we've got Giri, and we've got Alexander Predke, and Arjun Erigaisi. This is the final round of action at the FIDE Grand Swiss 2023. And after it, I will tell you everybody that made it, who else can make it, who else can't make it. And if you've been wondering why Magnus Carlsen is not playing in this tournament, it's because he doesn't want to. That's the whole reason. So that's all. That's all I've got for you today. The final round of the Grand Swiss 2023 begins right now. Arjun Erigaisi playing against Hikaru Nakamura. Arjun has 7 points. Hikaru has 7.5. Arjun has to win. That's the only way he's going to make it in. He plays e4, and Hikaru, who normally is an e4, e5 player, and will frequently play the Berlin or frequently play the Italian, plays the Sicilian defense. This man is playing with the black pieces. He is half a point away in first, and he's not looking to kill the game. This is Giga Chad behavior. Also, that was my Discord. I apologize. For some reason, it was not on streamer mode, and that is normally activated when I am doing these recordings, so you probably all thought it was your Discord. It was my Discord. I do apologize. I'm actually making the thumbnail for this video right now. So shout out to Jojo the thumbnail man. Knight f3, knight c6, and Hikaru plays the Kalashnikov Sicilian, which, by the way, might have the coolest name in all of chess. Like, you're playing a Kalashnikov. That's pretty cool. Kalashnikov Sicilian is kind of like a Sveshnikov, which is this, but it immediately looks to attack the knight, so this and this are not yet committed. And after knight to b5, Hikaru plays d6. Otherwise, the knight would have gone there. Now, here, normally, white plays knight c3, and then after a6, there's a very, very high chance that the position transposes to a Sveshnikov after knight to f6, and then white can play like bishop to g5, b5, knight d5, and now we are just in a Sveshnikov. However, Arjun Erigaisi plays this move, which is a move that I have literally never seen, and it is almost never played. And it looks really stupid, but the idea is actually pretty straightforward. It's just it's just the same position. So like knight 1a3 and then this move order is the same thing if the knight went there. So I've just never seen that particular move order, but you know, most people just play knight c3. But you get the exact same position regardless. It's the exact same position. It's just a different knight going to a square. Anyway, instead of playing knight f6, Hikaru plays bishop e6. So this is not a Sveshnikov. This is a Kalashnikov, and Hikaru is delaying the development of this knight. And he is going to develop his queenside first with b5 and rook c8. Erigaisi plays knight c4, Hikaru plays knight f6 now, and the difference is that this is already here. That's a very, very big difference. Very big difference. Normally, white plays knight d5. This knight is hanging out on a3 for a while. Now, Arjun plays a4. a4 stops Hikaru from playing b5, so he plays rook c8. And Arjun plays bishop g5, trying to remove the knight from the defense of the d5 square, which Arjun would like to plant something on, and Hikaru plays knight b4. You will notice that Arjun spending all this time, a4 is a massive commitment. That is a huge commitment, and now Hikaru controls the b4 square, so he is going to put his knight there, and that is going to fight for that square, and that is also going to open up the pressure by the rook, and that is also going to pressure the knight, the pawn on c2. So Arjun clearly not in the most comfortable situation, and down 26 minutes on the clock early. Meanwhile, Hikaru just doing his thing. Bishop e7, developing the bishops. Bishop to e2. Arjun now down 37 minutes on the clock. Hikaru plays knight g4. He's not even thinking. He is not even thinking. And at this point, this was described by the commentators as the best Kalashnikov Sicilian defense in human history. Which is a crazy thing. So basically, this move is so committal so early that generally white is able to exploit the d5 square and the pawn on d6 if played the best way, right? But like the best way generally in chess, black is still able to equalize, but that is generally the consensus. Now, this is not what happened in this game. In this game, Hikaru dropped both of his knights out. This got a brilliant move. It really shouldn't, but the idea of knight to g4 is that if you take the knight, black goes here, and then black just gets the bishop, black gets the f5, black has good attacking chances. Instead of that, actually, this is exactly what happens. I thought they could have entered this also like this, bishop e7, and then knight takes e3. It would have been a Zwischenzug. You take the queen, I take your queen, and if this, white ends up with these goofy doubled pawns. Speaking of goofy doubled pawns, bishop takes, queen g4, queen f6, Hikaru defends himself. Arjun now down nearly 1 entire hour on the clock. I think Hikaru at this point was seen pacing outside because he was, brimming with confidence. Hikaru castles, and Arjun now has to spend, some time here to figure out how he's just not going to be worse. So Hikaru undeveloped the queen, and Hikaru at this point could consider knight c6 and putting the knight here. Can also try to put the queen on h6 to pressure the knight and try to play rook f4 and knight d4. But I mean, look at Hikaru's position. He controls the only real open files that matter. The pawn on d6 is weak and probably should be defended, but you don't even have to defend it. Like, you can take. This is mate, so that's not going to work, right? Put the knight on d4. Now, he goes back to e7. Arjun plays queen e2. Now the knight goes back to c6, and he puts it on d4. And I mean, black's position is just incredible. Like, he is... Arjun now has to trade, and Hikaru just does the very simple and straightforward bishop takes. He takes on e3 because Arjun can't take like this. He would lose his pawn. So instead, Arjun takes with his pawn. And we have a big trade, and these pawns do not impress anybody. Hikaru can also grab this pawn, but then there is maybe rook c1 and queen b3. He just goes back, and he says, Arjun, you're not going to beat me. You're just not. I mean, you don't have the pieces. You have these double D pawns. Arjun doing his best. I mean, he's sliding, he's pressuring, but it's Hikaru who gets the queens off the board. It's a rook and knight endgame, and they got 7 pawns each. Hikaru's good with the draw. You know why he's good with the draw? Because he's guaranteed a candidate spot. That's why. Arjun plays rook c3, and Hikaru just starts bringing his king. There's other plans here. You can try to reroute the knight. A little bit earlier, there was a plan that could have been played somewhere around here. Hikaru could have played knight b8 and tried to put his rook on c6 and then played knight d7, knight f6 with a queen on c7. Like, a lot of stuff you could do, but Hikaru plays it very simple and straightforward. And this is just not enough material to beat one of the best players in the world. Actually, right around here, the computer was even saying black has like a minus 0.4 advantage, which in an endgame is a big deal. Yeah, Hikaru just kept it very simple and traded the pawns, played in the center. And in this position, rook a6 is going to send us to an endgame. That would be a draw. And that's it. Arjun's chances are finished. And now Hikaru awaits what happens in this game and what happens in this game. Now, if Vidit loses, if Anish manages to beat Esipenko, let's see what happens. Hikaru makes a draw. So he has 8 points. If Vidit wins and Esipenko both win, Hikaru doesn't make the candidates. So all eyes are on those games. You know what I mean? He's got 8 points, but 2 guys can now get 8.5 and beat Hikaru because only the top 2 will make it. So, Anish Giri, Andrei Esipenko. Andrei needs to win. Andrei plays a queen's gambit declined. Now, here's the thing. You got to remember, when it's move 2, you're maybe playing for a win, but you're also kind of happy to make a draw, right? Like, it's weird, because if you win at all costs, if you play to win at all costs, but then you lose, could you have drawn, right? So he just plays, we're just in an exchange. Queen's Gambit declined. Knight e2, and Esipenko plays c5, which is an aggressive move. You actually notice a lot of time being spent by Anish, right? Because bishop f5 is not a common move. I mean, more generally, black goes here, c6, knight d7, knight d7. Maybe black plays for c5, but bishop f5 is very provocative, but because white can go after this, and then probably Andre wants to play b6 and just shake things up a little bit. Knight e2 is the option chosen by Anish. Takes, and he takes on d5. So Esipenko plays in a way where he's giving up a pawn. He plays c5, dc, bishop c5, knight takes d5. And that bishop is hanging. So Esipenko plays in a way where it's all prep, 11 moves of deep prep. He's pawn down. So he's going all in. If Giri cannot deal with the counterplay that's coming his way on the queen side, his extra little stupid e-pawn won't matter because he's not developed enough, right? So, knight takes f4, okay? Queen takes queen. Rook takes, e takes. Knight d7. And he just says, Andre, you have 5 pawns, I have 6. We have rooks and knight and bishop. So, you gonna win this game? Andre plays knight f6. f3. h5 by Andre. Okay, he's preventing g4. Preventing g4, but, I'm sorry, isn't there just a pawn hanging on b7? Yeah. And Giri just 2 pawns up. He's got 6 pawns, Andre has 2. 4. He's got 4. Math. YouTube, YouTuber. Let me, I'm going to drink a little matcha here. So, plays rook d4, creates counterplay. Bishop e2, staying solid. King f2. Rook b4. Nice idea. If rook takes, a takes, knight is hit. This is hit. Rook a2, rook b2 would be very nice for black. But Anish Giri is not 1200. He's like, 2.5 times that. Not exactly, but we have a big trade, and he's just better in a rook and knight endgame. We just saw Hikaru in a rook and knight endgame. Hikaru in a rook and knight endgame, the pawns were identical. They had 5 pawns each, 6 pawns each. This is just more for black, for white, and Andre does his best. But my friends, I think, sadly, this one has come to an end. G takes f5. Andre could have tried to maybe take, but he's just losing. There is nothing to be done, and I think he's going to be kicking himself a bit because this was just not the best opening choice, I guess. I mean, it's very difficult to play for a win on demand, especially against Anish Giri, who is very, very, very solid, very, very well prepared. They all are, but Anish, he has a reputation of being like top 3, most prepared in the world, I would say. And that's it. The run of Andre Esipenko is over. And that means that if he loses, which in this position he did, he resigned. That means all eyes are on Vidit Gujarati. Vidit versus Predke. Who will join Hikaru? Vidit plays d4, d5. Also, just like the other game, remember, 7.5 for Vidit, 7 for Predke. Predke plays d takes c4. Plays the Queen's Gambit accepted. Knight f3, knight f6. This is the most solid approach. White could play other things. White could play e4, e3 on the other first few moves. Like this. And bishop takes c4. And this is a deep main line. Now, white here can play knight c3, b3, bring the bishop back voluntarily, play queen e2, rook d1. I mean, there are so many lines, but white has another line, and this is called the boring line. And Vidit takes on c5. And the boring line, my friends, just involves an early queen trade. So now it's an endgame before the game even begins. And I think the plan here by Predke was make the game boring and potentially look to fight back in the endgame. Bishop e2, put the king on e7, And then he put his bishop on d7, and he brought his bishop back, and Vidit went here. Now, Vidit struggling early out of the gate in terms of time. 17 minutes down. Predke covering the threats, just waiting for Vidit to come to him. It's like this game, like, are you going to play for a win? You're going to play for a draw. What are you going to do? Bishop c3. Now here, an interesting move, rook here, so that the pawn is protected, so you can move the knight. Vidit plays here. Both guys bring their rooks. And Predke is the one playing for a win. g5. Wow. So now knight d4, getting out of the way of the pawn. The knight is hitting this, which will allow the bishop to get to the b4 square, which will allow the bishop to hit the king. In fact, you can play a Zwischenzug, in between move check. Look at that move. If you just took on d4 here, black would play knight d5, hitting your bishop and stopping the check. But you take on d4, that removes the defender of that square. So I check your king. Now you move, now I go here. And white is a little bit better, but it's still very tense. Now Predke thinks for a while he could go here and then g4, but instead he plays g4 right away. He should have played knight d5 first. Because, for example, if bishop a3, g4, and now knight b3 trying to go here, there is bishop a4, which is a very curious idea. If in the game, knight d5 did not happen. Knight d4 happened, and then g4. But after knight b3, now if you play knight d5, I'm already too fast. So you don't get to play bishop a4 because I can take on d5, which defends this and removes the defender of that. So he had to play that first because now he does it this way. He tries to bring his rook to fight on the 5th rank. Knight c5 from Vidit. Bishop c6. And Vidit finds this nice knight takes a6. Look at that. Removing the defender of the bishop. The knight goes to d7. And Vidit plays this nice move. Bishop f1. And it's not easy for black to make a move. Rook a8. Bishop d6. You still can't take the knight because of this. Very tense. Knight c7 is about to happen. Bishop a4 is apparently a losing blunder because white has this very simple b3. For some reason, Vidit did not like giving back the pawn, even though apparently here he has like nearly +2 advantage on a high-depth stockfish. But instead of that, he went here. Now black stacks his rooks. Knight c7 check is possible. And I think Vidit liked this because at the end of the sequence, knight c7 check, there's a rook hanging, but there's a rook hanging. So here, now there's a rook hanging here. Takes, 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 takes. You can't take the pawn because bishop b5 pins the knight to the king. So black has to go here. Now a4, you can't take because bishop b5. And my friends, Vidit is just up a pawn in an endgame. A pure, clean pawn. Non-GMO pawn. Rook d4, allowing the rook to infiltrate along the 1st rank. But we defend ourselves, and now we lash out with our pawn. This is a very calculated decision, because he's going to lose a pawn with a check, but his bravery is rewarded, because after king to g2, the knight moves, the bishop escapes, and Vidit will win the pawn on b7. And that is so important because now his pawns will just go. 2 connected, furthermost outside pass pawns on the outskirts of the board. Black runs backwards. The king is checked a few times. He's not going to blunder a fork. It doesn't even matter if he loses the rook. The pawn is queening. Rook e5, rook f5, and on the 47th move of the game, as Vidit hit his king in the corner, Alexander Predke resigned. And not only did Vidit qualify to the candidates tournament with this win, he won the entire tournament. The FIDE Grand Swiss 2023 is won by Vidit Gujrathi of India with 8.5 out of 11. Second place, Hikaru with 8 out of 11. Vidit lost the first round of the entire tournament, then won 7 out of his next 10 games. This is his best tournament ever. Ever. It's not close. He's been waiting for a breakthrough for a long time. Vidit's 1994. He's nearly 30. He's 28, 29 years of age, and he's been around 27, 20, 27, 30 for the last couple of years. This is his big moment. And now we have 2 Indian players in the candidates for the first time ever. We have Pragnananda, more on that later. And a quick update on the women's side. Vaishali Ramesh Babu, sister of Pragnananda. And then after this, I will give you an overall update of who else can make it to the candidates and what is at stake. Is playing against Badkhuyag Munguntul from Mongolia. The only thing that can happen in this game for Vaishali is that she loses, and even then she is guaranteed to win the event. If she wins this game, she becomes a grandmaster, so a lot at stake. And she plays like there is a lot at stake. Look at her firing her kingside pawns away. The queen takes the knight on h4, and she gets a monster attacking position early. But her opponent gets the queens off, and it's going to be kind of hard to win that. But Vaishali is still in a very, very strong position. Very active pieces. She brings her knight, takes back with the king, and puts the knight square into the white position. Rook to e2. Black making progress. For reasons I can't fully explain, Vaishali did not like taking this pawn. It is a free pawn, though. I think maybe knight e4, counter-attacking measures, but she goes here. And I mean, white is still very, very, very much on the back foot, but now she's starting to make a bit of a comeback. e4, c6, and let's not forget, Vaishali already clinched the tournament, so it's just about risk management. But suddenly here comes white, and this is very scary looking. So black has to play defense, and the players shuffle their pieces back and forth. There is not much that can be done here. White plays rook a2, and black's not going to make any more progress. The position is blocked. There is still a bit to play for, but white offers a draw. And Vaishali wins. She wins the tournament. Also with 8.5 out of 11. Just like Vidit. She makes it to the candidates. She was already guaranteed a spot. She does not become a grandmaster. She needs like 4 or 5 more rating points. But this is the first time in history a brother and a sister are playing in the open and the women's candidates. This has happened before where siblings have played because the Muzachuk sisters, speaking of Muzachuk, there you go, Anna Muzachuk, Maria Muzachuk, they have played in the women's candidates at the same time, I believe. But this is the first time it's been brother and sister open same year, and it's very, very cool for India. So if you're Indian, you better be hyped about this. And this is the final game to determine who is going to make it. On the women's side, Pia Kramling, you may know her as Strong Grandmaster, chess legend, and or Anna Kramling's mom. Some of you might know Pia as Anna Kramling's mom, and that's okay. You haven't been following chess for, her entire career, which is some 20, 30 years. Anna Muzachuk, playing with the black side, by the way. We also have kind of a queen's gambit accepted, just like in the Vidit game here. Very tense position, but tough to break through. And at some point, the sides are going to clash, and a lot of pieces are going to fly off the board. And here we go. Here, the pieces start flying off the board, and they're gone. And they're gone, and white is going to win the pawn back. And this is a drawn endgame that only black can play for a win, because black has more pawns, but it's very tough to win it because the kings are just too advanced, and whatever pawns you're going to get, the other side's going to get a pawn as well. Bishop takes e5. And now actually maybe only black can find a way to throw this if black, accidentally see? King here, g3, g6, and king f6 is a winning endgame for white because this king is just stranded here. So instead of any of that nonsense, after king takes e5, the players agree to a draw. Anna Muzachuk gets second place, just like Hikaru, 8 points, and she also makes it to the candidates. My friends, before you go today, here are your candidates. Я не помнящий, because he just played the World Chess Championship and was the runner-up. And the runner-up does make it to the candidates tournament again. He also, right? Yes. 2, Hikaru Nakamura, because he got second place in the Grand Swiss. Vidit Gujarati, because he won the Grand Swiss. Pragnananda, because he's a finalist in the World Cup. Now, where it gets weird, technically Magnus Carlsen is on this list. Technically, he's not. Instead, it's going to number 6, Nijat Abbasov, because Magnus does not want to play the candidates. If he says he does, Nijat won't qualify. It will be him, Magnus, and Fabiano. Fabiano got third place at the World Cup by beating Nijat. So Nijat gets a spot despite not earning a spot. And that's because Magnus, not earning a spot, but he got 4th in the World Cup. So I don't know when Magnus's deadline is. Like, can he just show up the day of the candidates and be like, no, Nijat, you just go. No, it's me. I'm playing. I don't know. I don't know what his deadline is. I'm sure FIDE is going to give him a deadline. Or maybe he's already said he doesn't want to play. He might change his mind. Can he change his mind? I don't know. Anyway, the number 1 rated player in the world, January 2024, right now that is on pace to be Alireza Firouzja. Because the others are Magnus, Fabiano, Hikaru, Ding Liren. Ding Liren cannot play the candidates because he's the world champ. Jan, Hikaru, Fabi, all qualified. And the FIDE circuit winner. The FIDE circuit winner it's a circuit of tournaments, which qualify for a leaderboard. And if you play in enough of them and do well in enough of them, you make it to the candidates. At the moment, the leaderboard number 1 is Fabiano, but he already qualified. Then it's going to likely be Anish Giri after this tournament because he got third. He got third in the Grand Swiss. So it's looking like it's going to be either Gukesh or Anish Giri. But probably Anish Giri. Probably. But it's very close between those two. If Gukesh makes it, 37.5% of the candidates are going to be Indian, which is crazy. Anish Giri looking to be the front runner right now. Crazy stuff. So it's looking like the candidates will be everybody on this list, plus Anish Giri, plus Alireza Firouzja. It's actually kind of like the weakest candidates, or so I saw somebody calculate something, because average rating or whatever, I don't know, but I'm excited. I'm very excited. And it's happening in Toronto in spring of 2024. So if you're in Toronto, I mean, that's what they announced. They might move it. Normally all FIDE events are in like Russia, Kazakhstan, and all of these places, but this would be the first candidates in North America in like 70 years or ever. So exciting times. Appreciate you all very, very much for covering, for following the tournament coverage alongside me. Back to regularly scheduled programming. And folks in London and the UK, I will be there in November. Fan events coming. Follow on Instagram. Follow on Twitter. I will be announcing all of that good stuff. And in Toronto, I will be announcing on socials as well. So if you should just follow me on something, because I'm going to announce it. And then you won't sit there going, well, coming in my city or not? You know, that's what you sound like when you ask silly questions that I have given answers to. I will see you all in the next video. Get out of here.